Good morning, beautiful people. Hope you're having a great day so far. We are gonna talk about fucking exercise, building an upper day, part 2. So once you have chosen the exercises, well, first you want to choose your joint actions that you want to train. Choose the muscles that you want to train and the muscle regions, and then choose exercises that are going to challenge the joint actions that those muscles do. So now that you know the exercises that you want to do, you need to break them up and fucking put them into a split. Choose the order. And you also need to decide if you want to do unilateral or bilateral. So whichever split you're doing, if you want to do upper lower or full body, you can do push-pull legs too. Just anything that has at least a 2 times frequency. I am not a fan of anterior posterior because if you have any understanding of biomechanics, you realize that it is physically impossible to have a true anterior and a posterior day. Like, are you just never going to do any squat patterns because you're gonna hit your quads and your glutes? Are you just never going to do any frontal plane adduction because now we're hitting pecs and your back? You can't do rows either because now you're doing elbow flexors and back. So you have to just do purely isolation movements, and I know people aren't doing their anterior posterior days like that. They're not doing every single thing, single joint, and so it truly just is a weird split to me, and it just doesn't, it's not named correctly. But if it works for you, go for it. At the end of the day, I don't give a fuck what you do. But I'm just here to lead you in the right direction, be your shepherd of sorts. And anyways, pick the split that you want to do. I would say do upper, lower, or full body. And then once you know the split that you want to do, how many times do you want to do it a week? If you're addicted to the gym like me, you're gonna do upper lower 6 times a week, because then you only have to take 1 rest day and you can live at the gym pretty much. And you can also do, if you want to do full body and you want to go as much as possible, do full body every other day. Now, the only problem with full body every other day is some people don't like it because it doesn't stick with your schedule. Like, your rest days aren't the same every week. They're the same every 2 weeks, but they just shift around. So if you need that consistency, you're not going to get it from full body every other day. And you also need to take into account that it's harder to recover from either full body every other day or from upper lower 6 times a week. And so you need to allocate your volume accordingly. You're going to be able to do more volume on a given session if you're doing upper lower 2 times a week or 4 times a week, or if you're doing full body 3 times a week. And the benefit with that is you get your weekends off. So if you don't want to go to the gym on the weekends, you don't have to. You get those back-to-back rest days, which can be good for just, general life, but also for taking any CNS fatigue into account. So pick your split, pick how often you want to do it, and now you're going to allocate your movements, allocate your volume. So you want to stick to 6 to 8, honestly 4 to 8 sets weekly. I know that this sounds not like a lot, but we know that you can net growth from 2 sets done. You can net growth from 1 set done 3 times a week. You will grow from that. You will grow from 1 set done 3 times a week. So you can do, and then how often you're hitting things is going to be dependent on the frequency of your split too. If you're doing upper lower 3 times a week, then you're pretty much stuck, or 6 times a week, sorry. You're pretty much stuck to this muscle group is going to get 3 weekly sets, 6 weekly sets, or 9 weekly sets. Unless you have one day where you do 2 sets and one day where you do 1 set. And you can definitely do that too. It's just, it further complicates things. And with full body, you're pretty much you're getting that you're getting 3.5 frequency technically, or 4. It's weird. So allocate your volume accordingly. My recommendation for volume is always you want to think of minimal effective dose, or smallest effective dose. So how can I go in and do the least possible and that will still get me growth? Because growing is very easy. Like I just said, you can grow from 1 set done 3 times a week. You will grow. So that growth side of the equation, when we're thinking of the stimulus to fatigue ratio, the stimulus is easy. Getting a stimulus to grow, as long as you're going hard, that's pretty much it. As long as you're getting close to failure, you're going to have high degrees of motor unit recruitment, and you're going to be getting high degrees of mechanical tension. There you go. You have 1 stimulus for growth, and the best way, 1 stimulus for growth, that's mechanical tension, and then you want to access all of your fibers, so then you want to have high degrees of motor unit recruitment. There you go. That's how you do it. Heavy sets, go hard. 1 to 2 RIR. There you go. So I always say start low. Start on the lowest end. Go with 4 sets. And because if you start high, then you're in a weird position of, okay, am I not growing because I'm doing too much and I'm too fatigued and I'm not recovering, so I need to lower my sets? Or am I at a state where I'm not doing enough and I need to increase my sets? You're just in a weird range. So if you start, like let's say you do 6 sets a week, then at what point, once you're not progressing, what do you do? Obviously, there's ways around this, right? If you want to test if you're just too fatigued, take an extra rest day. Boom, there you go. Take an extra rest day, and if you add a rep or 2 on whatever you think you're plateauing on, that's your answer. You were just doing too much, you weren't recovering. But if that doesn't fix the problem, then it might be a stimulus issue. However, if you want to avoid doing all that in the first place, and you don't want to be spending 1 million hours a day in the gym, just pick the low end. Go with 4. Go 4 sets a week for your muscle groups, and then see if you're growing. And if you're growing, great. With programming, you should stick to if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Everyone's too focused on maximize this, maximize that. If you are progressing, the best program is the one that you're progressing on. At the end of the day, are you getting stronger every single week? No. Maybe you need to change your program. If you're advanced or an intermediate, if you've been doing this for 3 or 4 years or more, you probably can't expect to grow, and you're natural, you probably can't expect to grow every week. Now that you've picked your frequency, you've allocated your volume, you're starting on the low end, so you're doing pretty much 4 sets for everything, for every muscle group. Oh, and another thing with volume is, if you dive into the exercise science literature, you're gonna see that there's direct and fractional sets. So fractional sets is how most of the literature counts volume nowadays, and I am not a big fan of fractional sets. Fractional sets essentially is you give half. So if we have one arbitrary unit of stimulus, then if you're doing a chest press, you're giving one unit of, so it's one set of chest, but then you're also giving a half a set of triceps, and then you're also giving a half a set of front delt. I'm not the biggest fan of doing this because there's no way to really tell if you're accessing the highest threshold motor units of those other muscle groups, the front delt and the triceps. And there's also not a way to really know the activation. I mean, we have some ENG data for a lot of things, but we don't for a lot of others. So I just do direct sets. I don't fuck around with fractional. Yes, it's something that you can take into account, but at the end of the day, the reason why your biceps aren't growing is not because you're doing rows. The reason why your triceps aren't growing is not because you're too fatigued from doing presses. And they also don't take away. I know there's a huge debate right now of, oh my God, is a press or a fly better? It doesn't fucking matter. Look at the EMG data. Theoretically, yeah, a fly is going to be better. But look at the EMG data and look at the hypertrophy data. They're about the fucking same. They're pretty much the same. You're going to get the same pec activation for both. So pick whatever one you like. If you're a beginner, do a fucking press. You need that stimulus for your triceps and your front delt too. The reason why I don't like to allocate it as 0.5 is it's just so arbitrary and we don't really know how much you're getting. So count one set. So chest press, just one set for chest. That's it. That's how I would count it. You can do fractional sets if you want. But when I'm saying do 4 sets of them, that's the other thing with starting low. When I'm saying do 4 sets for chest or 4 sets for triceps, and in the literature they're saying, oh, you need to do 10, well, that's because they're doing fractional. So maybe if you're doing fractional, you might actually be getting 6 or 8. But since I'm counting direct, that's where I'm saying 4 is good. To start, remember, to start. And then if you're not growing, you don't have to worry about a fatigue problem because you know you're barely doing shit. So bump up a set a week. There you go. See if you start progressing. You probably will. And now that you've allocated your volume, you picked your volume, you have your exercises, you have your frequency, you have your split, and you have your volume. And then the last thing is, or I guess there's two other things. Exercise order, and if you want to do it unilaterally or bilaterally. Now, these 2 questions are going to be based on your own personal goals and your weak points and your strong points. If you are a beginner, you're not going to know what your strong and your weak points are. So just go with the muscle groups that you want to get biggest. If you want big ass fucking arms and you want to just look like SpongeBob with the inflatable arms, put your arms workout, put your biceps or your triceps, whatever you hit first is going to get the most stimulus. Because we have CNS fatigue that builds up. So CNS, central nervous system fatigue. You have supraspinal, which is supra, above the spine. It's your brain. And then you have spinal, which is spinal cord. And both of these fatigue mechanisms are going to build up throughout the workout. They do subside pretty quickly, but there is also metabolite buildup that's happening. Essentially, every subsequent set that you do, due to these fatigue factors, is going to be less stimulating. So that first set, when you walk in, that first set of the day is going to be the most stimulating set. So what do you want to give the most stimulus to? If you're a little bit more advanced, you're into that intermediate advanced section and you know what your weak points are, that's what you're going to put first. For example, I have baby triceps. I have terrible insertions and they also just don't fucking grow. So literally for 2 years now, almost 3 years, I have had triceps at the beginning of every single upper day. And that is, and that's, they've grown a ton from doing that. So I have my triceps at the front, at the beginning, every single time. And the other thing, so that's your exercise order. And after your first 3, maybe 4 exercises, it's really gonna be so trivial that you might as well just pick things that are close to each other. So for example, on my leg days, I finish with, on my current leg day, I finish with hip thrusts, adductors, and SLDLs. Why? Because hip thrusts are right next to adductors, which are right next to the machine that I use for SLDLs. It's convenient. And I've already done 3 exercises at that point. And so I just am doing it for the convenience factor. Because again, all of these theoretical scientific things that we're putting into practice, the effect size is going to be small. At the end of the day, you're still going to get a fucking that last set, as long as you're not doing 80 million exercises, that last set is still going to give you a ton of stimulus. And is it going to be a lot less than that first one? Probably not. It's not like going to be half of the stimulus that you're getting from the first one. It's not going to be anywhere close to that. It's probably, I don't want to put a number to it because that's something that is above my pay grade, but I would probably say, take this with a grain of salt, I'd probably say it's anywhere from that 80 to 90% is effective as that first set. Now, this is different when we're talking about intra sets of the same movement, because then that's how we know. So that first set, we know if we're doing arbitrary units of stimulus, you're getting 1 unit of stimulus from that first set. The second one, depending on which data set you use, is about 60 to 80% as stimulating. Some people even go as low as saying half is stimulating. But we know that it's a very big drop off between that first set and the second set. But in terms of with different exercises, it's probably not going to be a crazy amount. Now, that's how you're going to choose your exercise order. Your first ones go with your weak points, and then after that, kind of just go with convenience. You also don't want, ideally, you're not putting 2 different movements that are using the same muscle group right after each other. So you're not doing your leg extensions and then doing your squats right after each other. Ideally, you're giving them, you're going to hamstrings. You're doing like leg extensions, and then you're doing hamstring curls, and then you're going to your squats. Again, just to let some of that fatigue and that metabolite buildup dissipate. So now that you have your order, should I do it unilaterally or bilaterally? Well, in theory, unilateral is going to be more stimulating. And we have the bilateral force deficit is the best evidence for this. Bilateral force deficit is basically you can do more weight unilaterally. You can do more than half of what you can do bilaterally. So if I can chest press 100 pounds, let's just say, and unilaterally I can do 70 pounds, that's a bilateral force deficit. And that's because we only have so much signal, central motor command, that we can send to our muscles. And if we're splitting it, if we're sending it to both sides, it's going to be less overall. So it's the same amount of electricity that's being sent, but we're sending it to more places. So each place receives less, therefore it produces less force. But if it goes to the same side, then you can activate more fibers, and therefore you can produce more force. However, in practice, it's not going to be a huge difference. The main thing that I would say for using, but also we know that unilateral movements, because of that, we know that you're getting higher levels of motor unit recruitment. So there's 2 things that you should really use unilateral movements for. The first and most obvious one is fixing imbalances. Again, if you're a beginner, you probably have a ton, and it's probably but they probably aren't very pronounced. It's probably just that your dominant side, so if you're right-handed, like most people in the world, it's probably that your right side of a lot of movements is going to be stronger than your left. But that's kind of going to even out as you do your bilateral and unilateral exercises. But since we know that you can get those increases in motor unit recruitment, that is where you're at the end of your workout. That's where you might want to use some unilateral exercises, because we know that those fatigue mechanisms are decreasing our motor unit recruitment as we go on. We're losing levels of motivation as you go throughout the workout. So you can use a unilateral exercise to kind of combat that and get back. That's why I think the exercise order doesn't really matter once you're past those first 3 to 4 exercises, because you can just do something unilaterally and get that motor unit recruitment back. But the main thing is to fix your imbalances. So for me, same thing. Triceps, first of all, they're fucking tiny, but they also are imbalanced as shit. And so I start every day with a unilateral tricep exercise. My left one is smaller, so I start with the left one, because like what I just said, every subsequent set it gives a worse stimulus. So I'm essentially, what we're trying to accomplish with unilateral movements is giving that weak side a better stimulus, and we want it to grow more, and then we want the other side to get a shittier stimulus so it doesn't grow, and so that our weak side can kind of grow and catch up to the strong side. And yeah, the other one is just for boosting motor unit recruitment. So that's how you would structure an upper day. First, pick your joint actions. Pick the muscles that you want to train. Pick the regions of those muscles. Think about the joint actions. Pick movements that challenge those joint actions. Split it up over the week. Well, you want to pick your volume, which ideally you're starting low at 4 direct sets per week, per muscle group. And then split that up across the week however you want. And then choose your exercise order based on your strong and your weak points, and choose if you want to do things unilaterally or bilaterally based on if you have an imbalance, or if it's something at the end of the workout that you want to boost your motor unit recruitment for. I think that's pretty much everything when it comes to structuring a workout, an upper day. Oh, the other thing is where you put your compounds when it comes to picking if you want to do your compounds at the beginning or at the end. And there's arguments for both sides. Essentially, if you do them at the beginning, it could affect your workouts later on, because they're normally highly fatiguing movements, and that's the main one. And then if you do them at the end, obviously it is, and it's easy, you can, when you're in a fatigued state, it's harder to make neurological adaptations. So that's the other reason of why people do them at the beginning. But you can also, it works in reverse. When you do it at the end, then you don't have to worry about it affecting any of your other workouts. So I always say just try out both, except for quads. I will say I think you should do your leg extensions first, because you're going to use your rec fem, and leg extensions are rec fem dominant, and then do your squats a little bit later. It's also warming up your knees. Anyways, that was a fat yap session. Hope you guys learned something. Peace out.